We are rolling in Going Free, and we're with the one and only Jill Colton. We're going to bring her on right now because we had some tech issues, but we're underway, and it's a beautiful thing. Jill is with us. How are you doing, Jill? Great to see you.
Hi. I said I was sweating because we have these technical issues, but I figured it out, so it's all good.
She figured it out, folks. She can take the heat, and she can make it happen. How are things going with you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. How are you?
Awesome. Every day is a wonderful day. Every day I'm on holiday.
Oh, okay. Well, that's nice. That's nice. I'm happy for you. Not for me, but yeah. Good for you.
Well, you have had some challenges lately. If you'd like to bring us up to speed on, we could do that.
So when I was on the show last with you, I think that was probably in June-ish, and I was going for my other IVF transfer to have a third baby, and unfortunately it failed. It did not work. So I've been pretty much reeling about that for the last month. It's been tough. And I've just kind of been percolating with like what to do next and thinking about next steps. And, you know, I've kind of taken my mentality about COVID and applied it to my infertility in that I think that I have to have an innate trust in my body, and I have to stop looking outside to all of these so-called saviors and to the medical community. And I think that I have to just stick with my God-given fertility and just kind of go with that and deal with maybe some psychological blocks. But I had babies naturally. My first baby, it was a natural pregnancy. So I think, you know, at this point, I can do it again. I really believe this now. And so when I relate it to COVID, what I'm saying is that I didn't take any of the shots because I inherently believed in my own immunity and my God-given body. And I said, I don't need any of that poisonous substance in my body. So yeah, I trusted a higher power. I trusted, you know, what I knew to be true about myself. And also I got COVID anyway. So I was like, I'm not going to take it.
Right.
Like I said, I'm going to apply that same philosophy to my fertility. And I also have to come to, you know, not the conclusion necessarily, but I do have to reconcile with the fact that it may not happen for me, and I have to be grateful for what I have. So that's really tough for somebody like me. Like if you're really type A personality, you're always striving for things and setting goals and reaching them. And when it comes to pregnancy, it is not about that at all. Like you cannot apply the same mentality to that because I'm kind of like an anxiety prone person. I have a lot of like, I just learned recently actually from my naturopath, whether or not you believe in this, but I'm blood type A positive, and they say that A type blood actually has more cortisol. So they have more stress in their personality due to the cortisol in their blood. And I would agree with that. And they say that, you know, you should take melatonin for sleeping, and then you should do like very relaxing activities and meditate and like yoga and swimming and walking and all these sorts of things that are like low stress, because you intellectualize stress in a much different way than other blood types. And I would say that I agree with that. I say that, you know, doing all these things, gearing up for fertility, you know, being so formulaic and systematic in my approach is probably not the best for my personality. It actually makes me more stressed out, which is the worst place to be when you want to have a baby, right? Like you have to be calm and relaxed and centered, as opposed to like, that's why a lot of people, like they'll adopt and then they get pregnant naturally, like a couple months later, a year later. Like, this happens all the time.
All the time.
And even with my first son, I had kind of given up because it took me like a year, and I got so frustrated. I said, okay, I'm going to go do IVF. And then I didn't even think about it, and I got pregnant. So, you know, but easier said than done, of course. To let go is very difficult, especially when you're 42 and, you know, time is ticking and you have that always weighing in the back of your mind. But I mean, like, you know, it's such a myth that they're always lying in the media with everything that they do. But with fertility, I think they're the worst because they'll scare the hell out of women and tell you when you're over 40, you're too old. Well, this is BS because, you know, if you look at older textbooks about fertility, and I have, because, you know, that's my geek mind going back and looking at like books from the 1970s.
Yeah.
Oh, Catholic hospitals were filled with women that were over 42 years old giving birth. Like it was totally natural and it was never seen as abnormal or anything like that.
Right.
Sure, your chances are slimmer as you age, absolutely. But there are ways to improve egg quality and all these sorts of things. But they really do make you feel bad and like, oh, you're too old. And of course, this weighs on your mind. And then a lot of women just go, oh, well, I'm too old. Forget about it. I'm just going to give up on that dream. Or they get too stressed thinking about it. And then they run to an IVF clinic. And you know what? I'm just going to let all of that go. I'm just going to be like, you know what? There's a lot of women out there that are like 45 years old having babies. And yeah, it's not ideal. Like I don't want to be some gray haired woman carrying a baby around, but you know, I do what I do. Like I do see a lot of like older women with babies, and I'm not going to judge them because for me, I'm like, you know what? If that's the way God intended it for you, then God bless you. You are a very fortunate person, and a baby is a miracle. So it doesn't matter how old you are, you know?
Yeah, well, I agree completely. And we're really sorry that that happened for you, especially since it's something you wanted. But we will break out the prayers and the positive energy for you so that it will turn out exactly as you would like and the good Lord would have, whatever that might be. So, our prayers work because right here in the live chat, I see Victorian time traveler, a community member, had asked us to pray for his father who had lung cancer. And he writes here, received some amazing news. Long story, but my dad's going to live. I'd like to sincerely thank everyone for this in the community, for your prayers and positive energy. Well, God bless you, brother. That is fantastic news. So
that is amazing. Miracles happen every day. They really do. And so I really believe in the power of prayer. Not just, you know, that's amazing for that person. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, we're going to dive into, folks, some of these crazy stories that have been going on. Jill and I took a look at a few of them. Would you like for me to pull up the Sycamore? When you shared that with me, I was absolutely stunned. Sycamore Gap. Boy 16 arrested after Hadrian's Wall tree felled. My God. Just really quickly, so folks, if they haven't heard this story, look at that. I mean, it looks like a person that's been murdered. 16-year-old boy has been arrested in connection with the felling of one of the UK's most celebrated trees, landmark at Sycamore Gap beside Hadrian's Wall, and Northumberland was cut down overnight. Northumberland National Park Authority officials believe the tree, known as Robin Hood's tree, was deliberately felled. The police said the teenager had been arrested on suspicion of criminal damage. He's in custody and helping with the investigation. What did you think about this? And what else? I think you probably read through the whole story. What were your thoughts on this?
Well, it took my breath away when I saw it. Immediately, I thought to myself, I don't believe that that's a European 16-year-old that would cut down a tree like that. I really don't. I mean, something inherently in European people, like this is a historical tree. It's a tree that represents beauty, history, and the people that live there. It's a landmark. And, you know, European people love the environment, of course. We're always trying to save the environment, right? And something like this is just so terrible. And if it does happen to be, you know, a non-white person that has done this, it wouldn't surprise me in the least. I mean, it's such an act of destruction. It's just so sad. I mean, you see something like that in a movie, you see it in photographs all the time. Right. And it's such a historical monument. It's an environmental monument, but it's like representative of all the historical monuments that they're ripping down, right? It's just another communism in its own way. What do you think?
It brings up a great point in that, you know, the attack that we see across the West is on all things that white people are, create, and love and need for our well-being. And this is a great example of something that it lacked value without us, but then we invested this value in it, and it became, as they say here, this Supt Kevin Waring described the tree as a world-renowned landmark and said it had caused significant shock, sadness, and anger. And it reminds me of the white stag. What was it, last year in London, where it used to be one of our traditions to deeply respect such animals. And they shot it dead because it walked into the town. And they just said, well, we made an effort to tranquilize it. It failed, so we just went ahead and killed the thing. Our values, the things we care about, the things that hold meaning to us, are all of it under attack. And your point is perfect. They are after the statues. They are after the street names. And we place value in something like this, and they go out and profane this thing. They desecrate it, just like they're desecrating the totality of the West. In fact, these other stories that we're going to take a look at is a furthering of the desecration of what we build and invest meaning in. But this is so horrible. Our love of nature, as soon as you sent me this and I saw it, I couldn't believe that they had done this. And it could very well be. I mean, if it is a white teenager, then clearly he's at war with our people and our values, and he's inverted. It's the same way when we see a white so-called artist who is anti-white, and then everything they create is the inversion of what we love and what we are. What an absolute tragedy.
Yeah. It's like Ann Coulter would say, though, she had written about when Mexicans come to the beaches and they leave all of their trash because they just, the environment is just a second thought to them. The degradation of the environment around them. Like, whites aren't like that, right? Well, like, we'll pick up our litter. We'll carry our litter in our pockets so we can bring it to a garbage bin to clean up the area because we enjoy this beauty and we want things to be pristine. Not to say that other races don't want that, because the Japanese are very, very clean, and so are South Koreans. But what I'm saying is, when you're seeing all these migrants come into Europe and even Canada and the United States, you're seeing like homeless shelters. You're seeing them poop on our beaches, leaving disgusting messes. I mean, this is happening up where I live. I live on the shores of Georgian Bay, and there has been story after story about some of the famed beaches up here being literally pooped on in the sand by Muslims and Indian migrants. And people are beside themselves. They don't even know, like, they're like, what is going on? What is this? And again, it's another example of like, it's not their land, so why would they respect it, right?
Yeah.
They've come here, and it's not a part of their history. It's not a part of anything to do with them. They're just visitors here who are now being treated, with this red carpet from our politicians and our government. But they didn't fight for this land. They didn't die for this land. So what do they care if they, poop on the beach or leave their litter and trash everywhere, or cut down a beautiful historical tree? They don't care. It's not part of their history. So
several really great points there. I mean, and it's not only is it not their, that they don't see it as their land, because it's not their history, but they hate the history that's here. They hate that it's ours. I don't know, and I really don't care what these different groups of people do on their beaches and in their countries. But when they come here, we have a standard of behavior. It's our white mores, our white expectations for behavior. And that too is, of course, under attack. And so, hey, it's the white man's beach. It's up here in Northern Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. We have parks, and the people from other lands and other customs, things that are normal for them but not normal for us, heading out into like the pond or the lake and using that as a bathroom as well as recreating in it. And so much that the some of these lakes and ponds being tested have been found to be quite dangerous for people to swim in. because of the pollutants that just don't go away. So yeah, I mean, they're literally, anti-whites of all races are literally just pooping and peeing all over everything that we are and love. It's our history, our textbooks, and then our organic here monuments, which was effectively, this was a truly a beautiful part of nature. And the penalty for such a thing, if we were still in charge of our destiny, Jill, would be severe. And I dare say that if newcomers knew that we were in charge of our destiny and that we would severely punish these sorts of behavior, that they would refrain. They would hold back.
They would have fear. The other thing, though, is that if we do find out that it is a non-white person that, knocked down this tree, it's interesting because all the white liberals that are always advocating for migrants to come into Europe and North America, maybe an event like this, not with the, erasure of white people themselves in the country, would turn their minds on the migrant situation. Maybe you need to see destruction of the environment for you to wake up, right? It's like that snowy owl. Oh, but who cares about white babies not being born, or who cares about the genocide of whites, or, the demographic replacement, I should say, of white people in their own countries? Who cares about that? Let's focus on the snowy owl. And in this case, let's focus on that tree, because, whoa, if that's the case, migrants coming here, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it'll turn white liberals around.
It might. I mean, you are actually hitting on so many fantastic points. Many years back, I actually speculated in several conferences with colleagues that maybe if we stop talking, I mean, this was like half tongue in cheek, but maybe if we stop talking about the victimization of white people, white children, white elderly, white anybody, and just started talking about the environment being destroyed by the increasing size of the population and the treatment of the environment by these populations, the animals that are being harmed by this, show dog mistreatment of dogs and things like this, that suddenly anti-whites out there, at least the white ones, would suddenly say, well, wait a second, we can't have, the snowy owl, like you say, that thing can't be harmed. White babies, they can be totally guilted into oblivion. But let me try something at the chance or possibility that it might throw you backstage. I'll bring you back if it does, but I'd like to increase us so we're not so small on the screen. Oh, I threw you back, darn it. Okay, we will bring you
I'm back
forward again.
There we go.
Yeah, it threw you back there. It was worth an experiment. What I might just well, for the next one, for the next story, I really want to put that on the screen.
Can I also add the point, though?
Please.
Like, this is a perfect example what we were talking about with the focusing on the environment. This needs to really be a Republican or a right-wing issue. Like, we need to capitalize on environmental issues, because we don't have to say, okay, whites are being demographically replaced. We don't even need to mention that. I mean, obviously I do, but I'm talking about to convince white liberals to come over to our side. We can focus on the environment and we can say, hey, listen, do you want more traffic? Do you want more trash? Do you want more of the natural environment to be zoned out for residential housing, tract housing for all of these migrants or all of these immigrants? Let's focus on the environment. And what do we do to prevent all of that? We lessen immigration. We don't want all these immigrants here because we don't want more pollution. We don't want, more traffic, all these sorts of things. We need to capitalize on the environmental issues. But the right wing isn't interested in doing that. Not the right wing necessarily, but politically speaking, the conservative parties or Republican parties, they never talk about the environment. Why does the left wing have a monopoly on the environment?
Oh, so true. Yeah,
right?
Why is it? And they don't actually even care about the environment.
No.
The people who care about there are a lot of the folks out there who are really environment focused are largely apolitical. They're just total focus is on the whales or the snail darter or the creeks. And we love the clean air and we want our white babies playing in the clean parks and with healthy flora and fauna. So, but the Republicans, you're right. The conservatives, they never capitalize on the fact that the environment is being utterly destroyed. We don't even need a white population as big as it is in the United States. We could have a tiny population with the tech that we have today and be totally in harmony with the environment. We could restore great swaths of this country to nature and build cities in an entirely new way where the number of people per square mile or something would be radically reduced, because that's the kind of thing we like. We like to throw trees in places. We like to take walks out in the park. They're all the time talking about the non-white people at the parks. That's their decision. We're not preventing them from going.
Oh, I know. It's like these people have no agency over their own thoughts, right? It's like, okay, non-whites don't like to go to the national parks. Well, it's white people's fault. What? Yeah. Again, like they're removing agency from these people. Like maybe they're just not interested. Maybe it's not in their genetics. Maybe they don't like that sort of thing. They like other things, and that's okay. Like these are things that actually create diversity, which make diversity, like legitimate diversity, actually beautiful. But what they're talking about is a mishmash of all people and turning everybody into the same thing. And then, of course, erasing white people from that, right?
Yeah. Total white erasure. And talking about total white erasure, we can pull up this right here. Stick a fork in West Point. They're done. Wait until you see the new degree they're offering. I don't know if you all have seen this. I was stunned when I saw this photograph. Sometimes the photograph really is more than 1,000 words. West Point had a good run, didn't it? Once a beacon of prestige and elite training, this institution produced some of America's most outstanding leaders. But times have changed. Today, West Point is just another, we say anti-white, joke. Churning out young anti-whites with contempt for the very nation they're supposedly preparing to defend. West Point has reached the point of no return, particularly after exposure of the latest anti-white agenda, believe it or not. But they're now offering degrees in equity and diversity. And it's not a joke. Of course, that's totally means anti-whiteism. Look at this. Wow. These are supposed to be, Jill, West Point, the other military institutes in the United States. These are supposed to churn out the top of the top officers that are going to lead the military. And you also find many of these people in corporate America, which connects to another piece of news that we have. But what are your thoughts on this? Talk about white erasure. Not a single white person, all black females here.
Exactly. Like, how is that diversity at all? First off, if that's what they're striving for all the time, diversity, right? Mm-hmm. How is that the definition of anything? That's homogeneity, really. And it's also anti-male. So as you see, anti-white is always anti-male as well. Yeah. I think it's just an act of humiliation. When I see this, I really do. You're talking about taking a very powerful institution, which was filled with very strong white men who were set to protect the nation, and you've replaced it. You've completely inverted it with this joke. Yeah. And it is an act of humiliation. It's to tell white men that they are no longer the protectors of the nation. They're no longer the strong fist of this country, and they are being replaced, and it is obvious. Yeah. And I just, when I see stuff like this, it's just like it really reinforces the fact that we live in a clown world. It's just a joke. Like, does anybody in China, if they saw this, would they take it seriously? Like, what would they think of the American military? Or like, what would they think about anybody that is set to protect the nation in this picture? Like, are you really taking this seriously? First off, you have women. Well, what are women even doing there?
Exactly.
I don't understand.
Exactly.
Listen, I'm married to a misogynist, so I get it. But he's just like, Jill, like, he'll use me as an example, and he'll be like, look at you. Like, I love you. You're my wife. But like, I can't really take you serious. Like you're just this little thing that I could like throw across the room. Like, he's like, are you really going to be on the front lines? No. And also, like, why would you want to as a woman? I don't understand this. I guess it's just like one of these welfare military jobs, right? They sign up for this, and then the government just gives them grants and gives them money for being in this program. Like all government jobs, they're just like pseudo welfare jobs for women. Like that's what I honestly think.
Yeah. Very, very, very well said. Once again, definitely going to be having you back more often, Jill. This is so true. This is abject white erasure. This is anti-whiteism taken to its conclusion, and under the monikers of that objective of white erasure, diversity and equity. Both of those things mean no white people, no, and this is the first step. In many cases, you have the getting rid of the white people and the transformation of the institutions. So this, of course, was the most prestigious military institute in the United States, and turned out men like General Robert E. Lee and many other magnificent heroes throughout the history of this country. And now it has, because of anti-whiteism, white mores, white standards, white norms, they attack those with anti-whiteism. The anti-whites go after all of those things. You have to change to be accommodating. You have to feel white guilt. And because white people are feeling white guilt, which they shouldn't be doing, because they feel white guilt, they make these endless concessions, one after the other. And they finally let females in there. And then it went from being, well, she can be in if she can, female can be in if she can qualify, if she can do the job, to females have to be allowed in at certain percentages, which mean that males have to be discriminated against. And then it goes a step further, of course, because it's not just females, it's non-white females and non-white males, which means that white males, particularly up until increasingly recently, were the primary target of that persecution and discrimination, even from an institution. And now here's the thing, Jill, we built West Point. We create United States, we create Canada, we built West Point, we filled its libraries with the information, with the knowledge. We built those classrooms, we built those halls of genius, we created those customs for heroism and gallantry and glory. And now we've been white guilted out of all of it. And just like you see everywhere else across the West, they turn right around and they say, you haven't shared it all. You haven't turned it all over to us quickly enough. And so this is, you're right. This is like the humiliation of the rest of us. And this began, in fact, I was thinking about this, 1995 is where in South Carolina, the Citadel was, they allowed females into the Citadel. And there was this test they had to go through, where I think it was at the very end in order to graduate. And if you couldn't do this physically taxing course, then you couldn't graduate. And at the very end of it, there was this prodigious hill that they would soak with water so that it was muddy. And at the very end, where there was nothing left in the tank, these young, fit men would have to climb this hill. And the female, that was Shannon or something was her name, there was no way this like chubby female was going to be able to get through this course and climb this hill at the end. What ended up happening was 2 white males dragged her semi-conscious, chubby body up the hill so that she could pass. And how is that going to play out in the real world competition with other countries around the world, whether it's corporate and then especially militarily? How's that going to play out when every man's got to be able to carry his own plus something else, when you have guys dragging the tubby girl behind them so that she can cross the finish line too? It's absolutely despicable.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, it puts these men at risk, right? It puts them in danger. I think the whole thing is ludicrous. I mean, how can you not look at a picture like that and not laugh? Like, really? Like, you would look at that as like a sketch on SNL, because it's so outrageous and it's so farcical that you can't believe that it's actually real. Like, what do you think China would say about a photo like that? Like, what would an actual military, like Russia, what would they say about a picture like that? They would laugh. They would just say, this is a joke and we're going to overtake the United States. That's what they would say. And then, you'd have all these like women screaming, because that's really all that they're capable of doing. But my dad was a police officer for over 30 years, and he would say, and he was an ETF officer, so that was like emergency task force stuff, and he was a sniper professionally.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And so he would say that, women would try to come onto the ETF and they would fail so miserably because they were just not able to do these physical feats that the men were doing. So what did they do? They lowered the standards so women could, at least have a chance on getting on the tactical unit. And then they would do that sort of transitioned also into policing in general when they would have to do the physicals. The physicals now are like a joke because they have to, accommodate people that are overweight and also women who still can't, do these exceptional physical feats. So they've really dumbed the standard down so bad. It's not a 4-minute mile anymore. It's, an hour mile. It's bad. Like, I'm exaggerating, but it is quite bad. And then also what happens is that when you get a woman into these environments, the whole environment changes because like now guys can't be guys anymore, right?
Nope.
Like everything becomes different. They have to accommodate this female that's there, and men's personalities change. And, and then you also have like these women sleeping with these guys. Like,
that's it. Yep.
Like that's a lot of trouble there too. So
big time.
Yeah, like things get all out of whack, and it's just to me, I don't understand the drive for women in general to be in these fields. I don't get it. Like, I grew up in a policing family. Okay, so my uncle was a cop, my dad was, my grandfather was. And people would automatically assume with me, oh, Jill's going to be a police officer. And I would laugh in their face. I would be like, I know a lot about policing. I'm never going to do that, ever in a million years. It does not appeal to me whatsoever. And as a feminine woman, I don't really understand the appeal. Like, I just don't get it. Why do you even want to be there? Like, and don't you feel like as a woman, like, I don't know, for me, like maybe it's because I'm hyper self-aware, but like, wouldn't you feel like embarrassed almost? Because like, wouldn't you know that like you don't belong there? Like, there are certain facets of policing, don't get me wrong, where women are good, but in terms of like frontline stuff, no, or ETF or like, or hold up squad, like real masculine sorts of things where you need strength and like where you need men. I mean, why would a woman want to do that? I don't get it. It makes no sense to me. I really don't understand it.
So
I've taken us into a different direction. I'm talking.
No, that's absolutely what we're talking about here. I think largely, a lot of these females that want to get into these things, into these different fields, is they want to be there to disrupt and to damage what white people have done. I've never met a woman or heard a woman speak or read what a woman wrote that was allowed to go into one of these fields that heretofore women weren't allowed in because they couldn't do the job and they couldn't meet the standards, etc. I've never once heard them talk about how important our norms and customs and etc. are, and what we've learned from the past handed down to the present, and that we march forward with that. It's always about making something new, and that's the argument of anti-whiteism. Is we're going to make something new. We're going to destroy everything you've done. We're going to destroy, and how interesting too, that since we know for sure that throughout human history, there had been rulers that tried females in combat because, of course, they would. They want, all that matters to them is their wealth and power. They would try everything. And yet, over time, they found out that it was the males in combat by themselves that offered the greatest chance of success. The same would hold true then for policing and dealing with ne'er-do-wells and etc. And the anti-whites bust into these fields of ours, these sort of the immune cells of our civilization, and disrupt and undermine them, like giving them AIDS, giving them cancer, with putting these people into there. But what you mentioned about the like triangulation in these environments. I can tell you 100% certainty, all over the West, you have police departments, fire departments, and the military wrecked from love triangles and women using males, and males using women in charge to manipulate, to get out of work, to malinger, to persecute other people they don't like. It absolutely disrupts, in my opinion, of course. CNN will probably say otherwise, but it absolutely disrupts everything. And you're completely right. So many cases, women should feel really embarrassed in these environments, and men cannot be like men. Got to be among men to push each other,
of course,
to be more masculine, to get that job done faster. When we can't be who we are, when in fact that has anti-whites have essentially criminalized, if not stigmatized, being a man, being masculine.
But they don't.
We can't achieve anything.
The Black community is allowed to be hyper masculine.
Yes.
You can see it in rap music, right? The only ones that are allowed to talk about sex and violence in music now are Black men through rap music. Like, what happened to rock and roll? Doesn't exist anymore. No. Rock and roll used to be all about sex, drugs, and violence. Now, white men, it's like crooning and crying, all this hipster movement. All of it is very effeminate beta stuff. This is not masculinity from white men. It's not.
It's not. It's so true.
Yeah, like what happened to actual rock music?
Well, thank you for making that point, because so often we come upon cuck-servative types who will try to say, "Oh, it's not a war on white people. It's a war on males." Except that all the other males are allowed to be masculine. All the other males are supported. All the other males' concerns have to be addressed. It's just the white males. It's our fathers, our brothers, our sons, etc. They're the ones who have to be persecuted. And boy, if that's not a segue into our next piece of news, we have Jill for another 10.5 minutes, folks. So enjoy. We'll have her back though. So take a look at this. Corporate America promised to hire a lot more non-white people. Folks, don't use people of color. That excludes us from humanity, and that is reprobate for them to do. And then it actually did.
Good point.
You know, the thing that I'm gonna read this. I heard some other younger content creators saying, "Can you believe that now they're discriminating against white people?" I got some sad news for all our young listeners out there, people listening live or in replay. This has been going on for generations. This is just the uptick that occurs. It's anti-whiteism is incremental, and so it's just steady. But I have been refused many jobs. Lots of white guys older than me refused many jobs because they were discriminating against us to bring for all these years non-whites and females. But what's interesting, actually, there's another story right here, and I'll just read one line from it. This is from last year, talking about the same stuff right here. This is, let's see, where do I have it? It's right here. 1 in 6 hiring managers have been told, and this is, of course, they're going to give numbers that are conservative in the general sense of the word for what they're actually doing, but have been told to stop hiring white men. This is just last year, and these are these same big corporate companies. It was obviously more than 1 in 6, but it says here that additionally, this is the second line in this article, and I want to thank Kate for finding this for me. Says 14% of hiring managers said they have also been told to deprioritize hiring white women. There's an interesting thing there. Of course, increasingly, the anti-whites don't need white women to participate to undermine Western civilization. But if they're told to deprioritize hiring white females, then that means at some point they were prioritized, and they couldn't be prioritized over anybody but white guys. But we look here, it says the year after Black Lives Matter protests, the S&P100 added more than 300,000 jobs, folks. And we're not talking about like noble jobs. All working for a living is a noble thing. We're not talking about just like the janitor here. We're talking about the S&P 100 added more than 300,000 jobs, And 94% of those went to non-white people, which means that 94% of the time in hiring, they were actively discriminating against white people.
Mm-hmm.
Your
So how
thoughts
is
there?
that not a crime against humanity, by the way? How is that
Precisely.
something that is celebrated and touted by Bloomberg as if that is a celebratory thing? Imagine you did that in India and you said, okay, well, 94% of our top jobs are now going to Chinese people or going to Africans. How would the Indian people feel about being replaced in their own employment? Like, that's a big deal. Employment. This is how you put food on your table. This is how you have a life.
Yeah.
This is how you raise children. And now we're being removed from the employment square. Now it's not just about censorship. Now it's about taking money from us. So the whole thing to me is just, it is such a crime against humanity. For this to be touted and celebrated is sick. It is disgusting. And when I saw this stat, I gasped. I could not believe it. At first I didn't. I thought, oh, it must just be service industry jobs. But when I looked closer, I saw that no, it was like managerial jobs. And now they're going for the CEOs. Now they're going for the top dogs of the companies. But what was interesting is that they're also removing Black people from the square as well. If you look closely at the stats, it's Asian people that are rising to the top. And that's not a surprise. That it really is not. So you're just going to replace white people with high IQ Asian people. So it's still an affront to Blacks who think that, oh, well, we're winning the diversity war. No, you're not. You're being replaced by Asians and Indians.
Yeah, and that's what you see happening in wholesale in Canada and Australia. They bring in high IQ non-white people to be the new managerial leading caste, which is what's becoming of the West, is a place that also has caste like India. They're bringing these people in to be our managerial leadership caste. And we just see here at West Point that there's your military leadership for the future. They're not going to be able to not make these females into generals, admirals, whatever it might be, the branch of service that they're in. They're not going to be able to keep these non-white people. They're going to have to put them in as part of anti-whiteism, discriminate against white males and increasingly white females. And you see in the corporate America where the enormous salaries are. And this is the thing that I try to, it drives me nuts, because you have these people, like we had a battle. Kate had a battle with a female on Twitter months back that was saying, oh, any white guy that is saying he's having any hard time getting a good job as a liar. He's just a lazy. He's just overtaken with lethargy. That's all it is. Look at right here. How many times do we have to actually see the data that aside from our lived experience, almost every white guy can tell you that we go out to find work and we are told in no uncertain terms, you're not getting this job. We are diversifying the company. We are, and it's to various degrees in the human resource departments will tell you. I've had them actually tell me outright, not you. It doesn't matter how you did in school. It doesn't matter how many times you've won awards at previous employers. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. All that matters is you are a white male. What does this end up doing for a person's life? Well, it radically changes our people, for one thing. There's a breach of the social contract with our government because our government is allowing us to be discriminated against on the basis of our birth. How does that change our relationship with our government, governance, and laws? What does that also do for our desire to achieve, to advance, to make something good of that sensation of ownership of our country, and therefore the desire to protect and preserve and prolong the existence of that environment? It destroys it all. It destroys it all. When you're a white male in the West today, you have learned, and you continue to learn, and it's worse by the day, that you're hated, you're not wanted, this isn't yours. No matter how hard you work and no matter what innate talents you have, they're not going to benefit you. You will actively be discriminated against on the basis of your birth. And what about the consequences for the families that these white men would otherwise have? Do they not have families as a consequence because they decide they hate their life, they hate the world, they have to take a job far beneath them? What about the consequences, that unknowable consequences that these white guys would have done with the earnings that they made from these executive jobs, businesses they would have started, improvements that they would have made in the world for everybody of all races that live in certainly the West, but even beyond, because so many of our creations make their way into non-white countries to benefit those people as well. The costs are literally incalculable.
Oh, totally.
And this is, as you say, celebrated.
Yeah, it is despicable. The one thing that I will say, the one saving grace is like, good luck to these companies. Let's see how long their diversity programs last for. Let's see, because I promise you, it won't last long. Because there's an inherent ability that white people have that other races just, every race has their own thing that they can bring to the table. And obviously we created Western civilization, so we have something very special about us. So that translates also into the business realm. And who's creating these companies, by the way? Do we have a diverse profile of the people creating them? Because I promise you they're whites and Jews. That's who's creating these companies.
That's right.
And so I do find it interesting that they're willing to die for diversity. Really, they're willing to lose money for the sake of diversity. It's hilarious. And there is a little bit of me that will be happy when I see the revenge element, right? Like when I see the downfall of these companies, something about it will make me smile with glee, because this is exactly what you asked for. What did you think was going to happen? And the other thing that's interesting is how many discrimination lawsuits are they going to have in their hands? Not from white people, but from the diversity cast that they have hired. Yeah. And then it doesn't work out. Oh, okay, you're fired now. Oh, no. I'm suing for discrimination, because you know how litigious these people can be. Yeah. And, that's going to cost companies how much money, right? It won't be, we fired you because you're showing up late or you weren't doing a good job or these sorts of things, right? That's not the reason. Right. I got fired because of racism. Therefore, I'm going to sue, right? And then who's going to be the lawyer, by the way?
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be the lawyer. So true. So true, Joe.
Well, I actually heard something really interesting. I think it was Adam Carolla that was talking about it. Maybe this was a couple of years ago. And they were saying that companies were actually hiring white men because they have the least amount of rights in the workforce now. Oh. And so they were cheaper to hire and they had the best output, but they weren't suing for discrimination. And so they were hiring whites because they were like, oh, well, they're not going to get away with suing for discrimination, right? They're going to just shut up and take it. So we're going to hire them because they're not as problematic. Wow, so that's great. Like white pills in there too, right?
Well, I guess the few white people that get hired will then suffer second-class citizenship.
Well, yeah,
I hadn't thought about that. They will be able to, and I'm sure they are abusing the hell out of white guys, because for the exact reason, they've got to show up. They've got to do, and I imagine what these companies will do is they'll keep just enough white people so that they keep chugging along.
I think the calculation actually in my own head is 20%. And I think that's also the demographic number that they're going for, because exactly what you're saying. They just need that number. And they've calculated it because they're so and so they know exactly what they're doing. And I think it's 20%. And I think that's what you'll see in these companies. It'll be 20% white guy to keep it going. And then they're starting to discriminate against white women. Well, this was inevitable, right? Because they were just using white women to hammer white men, right? They were using them as an enemy, like a tool. But now that they've reached, what they've wanted, they've gotten the white men out of there. Now they're like, we don't need those white women. They're just as problematic, right? Yeah. Now we're going to just replace them too. So all of these white women who are on the front lines of the liberal idiots that are like, oh, refugees and Black Lives Matter and all this nonsense. Well, guess what? You're going to get replaced too. You're not safe. You have white skin. They don't see you anything but white skin. That's it. Yeah.
So true. And to your point about the different racial groups, and we'll let you go here, but we'll get out of here too. But I was at the gym. This is an anecdote. This was about several months back, and I was exercising, and I heard one Indian guy complaining to an Indian woman, this is Indians, about the hiring and who was going to be promoted, and how he was in the running with some other non-white group, and he was concerned that they had already hired too many Indians, and so as a consequence, he was just automatically not going to get the job.
Yes.
That's exactly what you said.
I actually have experienced this because I come from media, right?
Right.
And media is like in cahoots with the government. So all of the insane government policies translate into media. Like they're just like part and parcel of the media community. And that includes the diversity hiring nonsense. So I worked with this guy. He was like, I don't know if he was Trinidadian, and I don't know. He was a mix of something. But I guess most people would see him and think he was Indian. And they had brought in another on-air Indian guy, and he was furious because he was like, I'm the token Indian guy. I don't need another Indian guy here to steal my thunder. So they know exactly what's going on. And like, because these media jobs are so coveted, right? Like there's not so many of them. So when you're like the Indian guy for that station, you're up here because, you know, this is the world of diversity. It's not based on merit. It's based on your skin tone. And where we see it the most is in a place like media, because you're front and center on a television, right? You represent the government. Diversity is our strength. That's who you are. So he was angry at that. He was saying to me how he hated that there was more Indians coming into the field because it was now competition for him.
Yeah.
I'm just like laughing. And like we used to say all the time in media, like we'd find out when somebody would get a really top job. And then the first thing you would ask was like, okay, so who got the job? And if you didn't know the name, you'd be like, well, are they white? Oh, they're Asian. Oh, okay. Yeah, we get it. Or, oh yeah, okay, they're black. We get it. Like it's so sick. Because it's not based on credentials. It's not based on talent. It's not based on, like you would think with media, it's like a presence, right? Like it would be like your face and your attitude and like everything. Nope, don't care about that. Doesn't matter. It's just about your skin color.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I stopped working at the station that I worked at, because it was just so sick. It was all about your skin color, and didn't matter how good you were, or how many journalism awards you had, or what university you went to, or how many stories you got, or you know, didn't matter. Because if they had a black person in that particular role and that person quit, well, who was going to replace that person? Well, it wouldn't be a white, it would be another black person, right?
Yeah.
That's what they would do. And you know, after a while, that's sickening, because you just go, well, I'm never going to get that job.
Exactly.
That's for that person. That person's not that, right? So it really de-incentivizes you. It demoralizes you. You know, I would come home like working shifts, and like just sometimes I would cry, because I would just say like, this is so unfair. I've worked so hard like my whole life for this job, and I'm getting passed over for promotions. And like, I'm a white woman. How does a white man feel? Right?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. You just spoke my heart, because that's exactly everything taken away. That was ours, and everything taken away that we earned, and everything, you know, it's just, and you only get to live once.
I don't want to be a victim, because we are victimizing, like we are so victimized by the media and the government and all of that. But I want to say that you know, the phoenix will rise from the ashes. Like the creme de la creme will rise. They will find the ins and outs, and they will work through the system, because they're that smart and they're motivated and they're determined. You know, we're like that. That's how it works. That, you know, I have lots of faith in people like that, myself included. So
amen to that. That's a great place to to leave it. Thank God we got Jill on our side. You've been fantastic tonight. You're fire. We're going to have you back much, much sooner. Will you come back much, much sooner?
I would love to. I always have a great time on the show. You're so smart.
Oh, no, but you're so smart. Look at what you just did tonight. That was beautiful. Well done. Where can folks find you? I've got some links, YouTube and a Twitter link.
Yeah, my Twitter is good. I mean, I don't know what's going on with Twitter. Honestly, we could do a whole show on just what's happening with Twitter.
Oh
I have stayed at the amount of followers. Okay, like I don't care. Like I really don't. I'm just bringing it up because it's an observation and it's interesting. But like I have stayed at whatever it is, 7,500 followers for like 3 years. It goes up and then it comes right back down. Like speaking of demoralization, right? Like this is what they do. They did this with me with YouTube too. And it's so weird. I feel like I'm just stuck in this little niche of like, just stay there, child. Like we don't want you to go anywhere, you know? Like they just want to keep you in a little box. It's so, I hate Twitter now. It's so
I know
so gay.
It is. It's so happy.
But it's so frustrating because it's like one of those things like you do want to read like the news feed, right? Is very informative. Like I guess Revolver is okay, but like it's not the same as Twitter.
No.
Anyways, I'm wasting your time with this conversation. We'll talk about it next time. Because
you hear that, folks? We'll talk about it next time. But fabulous having you on, Jill. And we hope you and your hubby and your babies have a wonderful night. And we'll talk to you and everybody again real soon. All right.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I want you to reach out in love. I want you to let those brothers and sisters around the base, let them know that even though the anti-whites wield so much power, that we are winning every contest with them, and that it's only a matter of time. Tell them that they can be more than they are. Tell them that they can stand up for Western kind, Western civilization, and everyone who lives in Western civilization of all immutable characteristics. Tell them that there's a way that they can stand up for it in love with the moral high ground. Be gentle with them at first. Coming out of a story that you thought was the real world is one of the hardest things that folks can do. If you go there with a true spirit and a true heart, with humility, you're going to win more souls than you'll ever turn away. And in the end, all of that will redound to the glory of our people and the reclamation of our destiny.